going through a particular party phrase. Which is an interesting phase for a 35-year-old man to go through, far too old. But this one's called Be a Killer. Be a killer. And those were the words that echoed round my decaying brain as I sat on the bus from Manchester. The past 24 hours have been long and drawn out, an orgy of goodbyes and cheap gin rotting my throat, spent in the company of everyone and no one. The party boy, the loud clown, the roaring dancer, the sullen loner, the open counsellor, the introverted grump. In a day I've been all of these, sometimes all at once, sometimes none at all, sometimes one at a time. I tried out each persona as I hit each new bar, and then sometimes, just for shits and giggles, I switched personas in the middle of a conversation. I mean, it's not like I was going to see any of these people again. I fell in love so many times. I hated so many, I liked a few. There was an old guy, his hair was half dreads, half in a sensible cut. I thought I recognised him, but I slowly realised as we talked that he was me, just 30 years older. Every heartbreaking line he'd received was carved into his face. All those nasty words that stung him and caused him to wince were etched into the corners of his eyes. Every child that played with him, every lover that had ridden him, every person who had just been nice to him and made him laugh were inscribed into the corners of his mouth. His eyes were red, and he told me he'd been awake for 3 days straight, flitting from place to place, kept wide-eyed on a mixture of whiskey and cocaine. His wife had died the week prior, and he'd come to every pub, club, dive, house that he could find, places they'd been, places they'd shared, finding the same drinks that they'd drunk and imbibed the substances that they'd experimented with and took, sometimes with alarming regularity that when they were in their 30s were just about indestructible. We talked about his wife. He told me she was the most passionate woman he'd ever known, and they loved hard. She'd moved from some foreign country and neither of them had anything to be responsible for anymore. They'd lived in Manchester, they'd lived in London, they'd lived in Stockholm, in Reykjavik, in Athens, Italy, for one glorious summer. She had wild hair and big hips, and she fucked him like she hated him as much as she loved him. It was obvious that she was his one true love, and he showed me a photo and I could see all of this in her eyes. He told me never to settle for someone I didn't completely love. That in this life, all romantic notions aside, we only ever have room in our hearts for one complete love. If you get it and lose it, you'll spend your life chasing that person. You'll never find them again. They won't be the same person anymore. Anyone else you find, make them close, but they'll never be everything. And that love sets the bar. He told me to use my battle scars, to teach me to never let the wrong person in. To never let the hell that I've been through decide the person I am. But his biggest decision was to be a killer. Have memories, cherish the memories, cut yourself with the bad memories until they don't bleed anymore. But kill every fucking thing that hurts you. Kill every fucking thing that you dwell on. Only by being a killer can you move on, can you reset the counter and give happiness a chance to find you again. So we ended up in a hotel room in the Hilton. He'd paid for the penthouse suite. We took back a few bottles of gin, rum, whiskey, a few people too, fellow drunks from the bars. We partied hard, music booming out of the speakers as he and I stood on the balcony, watching the revellers inside dance and fuck and snort and fight. Gradually they left and it was just him and me. We finished the dregs of some Captain Morgan spiced rum and he sat with his elbows on his knees, his hands hanging limply between his thighs. He looked tired. He looked scared. He just looked lost. I stood up and wobbled slightly and stepped over. I wrapped my arms around him and I hugged him. I hugged my pain into him. I hugged my happiness into him. He stood and reciprocated. I walked from the room and looked back one last time. He held the pistol to his head with one hand and snorted something I didn't recognise from a wrap in his other hand. He dropped the wrap and he blew me a kiss. As the door closed, I heard a crack and I never looked back. So then, be a killer. Something he'd been unable to do when it mattered. And when all I could offer was one final night, something in his eyes told me he couldn't be saved. So I made damn sure that he went out with a bang and with someone who loved him, even if it was short-lived. I climbed on the bus. I took out my phone and deleted every person from the contacts and social media that hurt me with any regularity. I told everyone I loved them. And I decided I was going away for a while. I decided I was going to be a killer.